Okay, we've started. Okay, so hi, George and Mike. I start and I end the conversation every single time the same way. And how I start it is I ask, who are you? What do you do? And how do we know each other? And in my notes here, I'm pretty sure I start with George mostly. So George, if you want to start, and then you can do it too, Mike.
So I'm George Mastrianis. I teach fourth grade, and you and I know each other because my wife, Corey Lynn Tucker, is a photographer, and you have worked with Corey in the past, and you mentored with her. Yeah, so that's how we know each other.
Yeah. And what do you do?
Other than teaching?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that too. Yes.
Yeah,
the
well,
extra stuff,
other than teaching, yes, music. I'm a drummer. Play with musicians. I also love to run. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you, Mike?
Yeah, Michael McCotter. I'm a fifth grade teacher in Torrington. I love to do things in the outdoor, camping, backpacking. We know each other because we both volunteered at Valley Community Baptist Church, and we helped out with a group of high school students.
I know, and here we are, And it's funny because you two met each other after I met you, I think, Mike. And then I noticed that you two knew each other, and I was like, wait a second, teachers out here. Everybody's knowing each other. I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy you two are here today, so thank you for coming. This is a question for both of you. Again, we're just going to go tit-tat. And it is, how did you two discover your interest in teaching at young minds specifically, especially in like a female-dominated world? I actually looked this up, and it says between 77 and 80% of all teachers pre-K through 12th grade are women. It's different, you know? So that's why I wanted to talk to you two today. So
For me, it started with, again, being in love with the outdoors. I've been riding bikes my whole life, and I started teaching a summer camp in New York City and working with students in the summertime from all parts of New York City. I was specifically placed in Manhattan and in Queens, and kids would come from all over the boroughs and come to us, and we would do summer camp for about, it was about 6 weeks. And we would have all different camps for like 2 weeks in a row, and then another 2 weeks in a row, another camp would come. And that's how I kind of got into it. And I realized that I had this kind of natural teaching affinity. So
So I think one of the things that first brought teaching to my mind was in second grade, there was a male teacher called Mr. Tancredi, and everyone wanted him, especially the guys, I think. Part of it was I did want a male teacher myself. I hadn't had any male teachers, but we also heard about all the really cool things he did. He had classroom money. He had a basketball hoop in his classroom. We had to do that disgusting swish stuff, the fluoride, and he would play cool music during it. So I just really wanted that teacher, and I never got him. And so I think that kind of sparked the interest of there's not very many male teachers in elementary school. And then I have 3 younger brothers. So I think I always was in that kind of mentor teacher role with them. And then I quickly got involved with other activities, whether Boy Scouts or volunteering at Valley Community Baptist Church with Summer Bible Club and other things where I got to kind of be that mentor teacher leader. And I really enjoyed helping others.
yeah, that's all. And it is very clear to see you two are so good with people. And actually, I was driving in Torrington once, and I saw you playing out in the playground with all the kids. And I was like, oh my God, there he is.
not surprised.
Yeah, and just to see like a child's face light up when you enter a room there's really nothing like it. And it's just to know that you're a safe person for someone is really, it's a huge deal. So it's cool. So George, your first job was a 6th grade classroom once you graduated. Could you tell us what lessons from that time in your life do you still implement in your teaching today?
I would go back to the hands-on stuff. Like we did a whole unit on soil and earth processes. Even in 6th grade, they were still doing that kind of before NGSS came up, Next Generation Science Standards. So I remember bringing one of those big bags of sand that you could buy from Home Depot. I brought a whole big bag of sand to the classroom. I laid out a huge tarp, and the kids had to like do experiments and observe what was in the sand. And I could see, again, the kids lighting up. And those kind of experiences, how much it shapes who they are and the things that they end up loving to do. And it sticks with them. So that was a big one. And in that 6th grade class, we went to White Memorial in Litchfield, and they had a 2-night stay there. And they got to do a pond study. They got to go on hikes through White Memorial. Just spending that time with them was life-changing.
Yeah, very cool. And then Michael, your first job was at to be a long-term sub. Hey, I can do this. For 2nd graders. Could you tell me what lessons from your time do you still implement?
So I think being in 5th grade now, I don't do quite the same lessons, but similar to what George was saying, I really love the hands-on stuff. I think the kids really latch on to that. And when I was in college, I wrote down a list of all the big projects that I remembered from elementary school and things that I wanted to do in my own classroom. And they really were all the hands-on stuff or the acting out scenarios and different things. So I try to bring as much of that into the classroom as I can. So like when I was in 2nd grade, we were studying matter changing between liquid, solids, and gas. And so one of the fun things that we did was we made ice cream in the class. So again, talking about how something changes from a liquid to solid, but doing it in a really fun way. And so now being in 5th grade, I have different standards and we're addressing different things, but similar to trying to approach it with the hands-on model. 2 years ago, I think it was, when we had the solar eclipse, one of the lessons that I did was I had the kids make a solar oven out of a pizza box, and then they had to calculate the volume of the pizza box, but then they got to go outside and they got to make the s'mores with their solar oven.
That's so
so again, tying in the science, the math, and then some food, of course, because you can't go wrong with food. So I think, like George was saying, I think the kids really latch on to those. They brighten up. They're excited to come to school on those days. So whenever I get the chance to kind of build something around their interests, it really is exciting.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So going into the next stage before we get there, I'm just going to say that it sounds like from what you two experienced early on and what you bring into the classroom, there's just this sort of like magic about it, especially on those days where you get to use your hands and it's hands-on and all these things. And the teacher is invested and making sure everybody else is participating, all that good stuff. But I know outside of the classroom doors, it can be stressful, right? As a teacher, working with others and in a system. So I was wondering, George, if you could tell us what the lore around pink slips are and if you've ever received one, and what does tenure mean to you?
My first year in Torrington, I started in 2019. And at the end of that school year, which was the pandemic year, and we were shut down, I received a pink slip saying that, my contract wasn't being renewed. And at that time, I had already spent about 2 or 3 years working in different school systems and never landing a job. I had also done long-term substitute positions and could never land the job because at the time we had a surplus of teachers. But then in the last 2 years, now it's gone the other way, and now we need teachers.
So that's where the pink slips would come in.
Yeah, and so it was stressful in that come every June, you were now thinking about, okay, now I'm going to spend half the summer trying to find a new job, a new position, which is stressful in and of itself. And I always worked during the summers, and I still do. So that's something where I was like, okay, well, if I can't get a teaching job come late August, then I'll either keep painting with my friend or I'll get another part-time job, something, And luckily, I kept getting rehired. By beginning of August, you would get a letter saying, we do in fact need your presence in the classroom for the next school year, and then I would sign a new contract. And so for the first 5 years, basically, first 4 years in Torrington, I had that feeling. Like every year I was like, well, I hope I'm gonna get a new contract. And it started to change where I didn't have to wait as long into the summer. Then we were getting a contract by late June, right before school would end.
Wow.
So definitely stressful.
Does every teacher have a contract?
You get a contract that you have to sign as a teacher. Yeah,
and
whether you're
year
tenured
by
or not.
Year, or?
Well, for us, every year you have to sign a new contract.
Wow.
Yeah, even if you're tenured or not.
Do you have tenure or no?
Yes.
Okay, so what does that mean for you, and how do you think it helps or hinders the system?
I think for me, and I think Michael will have his perspective, but for me, I don't feel like I have to stress out as much knowing I have a job coming in the next fall. That is a very unstable feeling, and not knowing if you have a job or not can add to your life stress, and it can really cause problems outside of your work life, I mean, from year to year, I just feel like my dedication to the craft of teaching keeps improving, keeps increasing, because I'm inspired by the other teachers around me. I'm inspired by the people who I see are so dedicated to what we're doing. And I think that kind of applies to a lot of careers. I think at first when we're newbies, we don't know what we don't know. And over time, you start to realize, wow, this teacher has been here for 25 years and they stay probably later than most other teachers do who are younger or haven't taught as long. And then you're like, wow, the dedication is something that can build over time.
Yeah.
And so I feel that it's pulling the best out of myself and trying to push myself to be a better teacher year after year.
And that makes sense to me, because if you care about your job, right, and then you are in a job that even if you're doing good, if something is happening in the state that's changing, you're never guaranteed the next year, even if it's your favorite thing in the world, right? So to have that stability makes you think less of what am I going to do during the summer and the fall if I don't get a job, versus, hey, I can put all of my efforts towards my kids and focus on that. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And if anyone deserves tenure, it'd be you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So Mike, you're vice president of your elementary school union and the co-chair of the state's union's Human and Civil Rights Commission. How did you get involved in the union, and what does it do to provide for its teachers and students?
I was lucky I got involved very early on. So when I was hired as a long-term sub, I wasn't part of the union. I couldn't join quite yet, so I wasn't allowed to go to any of the meetings. So jokingly, like, I walked by all the meetings where they were holding their quick meeting, and I was very jealous that I didn't get to know what was going on. I really wanted to know what was happening there. So my very first year, we have monthly meetings for our local union. And so I started attending those each month because I wanted to be knowledgeable about what was going on in the district. And so I really found out a lot of information. Even within the same district, things work very differently between different buildings. I got to, again, be inspired by hearing different teachers at different levels. So I got more familiarity with teachers at the middle school and high school level as well. The collaborative nature of it, of working together for what's best for students and for teachers, is what drew me in. So after the first year, our local building rep was retiring, and so I got to take over that role. Similar to being a teacher, I think I have that personality where I like to help people and I like to be knowledgeable and skilled in the areas that I need to help others succeed in what they are doing. So I think having that information and being able to advocate for teachers and for students was something that I always really enjoyed doing. And so I continued to speak up and get involved in different places. And so luckily I had other people within our district that stepped aside and gave me opportunities to take more leadership roles. I go to the National Education Association's Representative Assembly every summer. I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago, there was a teacher who was close to retirement who was elected to go, who stepped aside so that I could attend and get more of that experience. So now as the Human and Civil Rights Chair, it's really exciting because I get to hear about what's going on in different schools and what different teachers are doing to advocate for all students to make sure every child in classroom can succeed. So it's really inspiring to see what different teachers are doing for our students that are coming from different countries, our students that are LGBTQ, our students that come from low socioeconomic areas, and racially and ethnically diverse populations. So again, I think sometimes teaching can be really hard and really disheartening, and sometimes you feel like you're trying really hard and turning the wheels, but not always making the progress that you want to. So I, again, feel inspired to be around other people that are fighting and advocating for what's best for our kids.
And speaking of advocating, what are some things that you've seen the union do in the last maybe year or so that has stuck out to you?
One of the biggest wins that we've recently had for the teachers union is repealing WEP GPO. So those were 2 penalties that affected teachers in the state of Connecticut, especially because we are lucky in Connecticut to have a teacher's pension that gives us the ability to retire with dignity at a certain point. And so WEP and GPO penalized teachers when they retired who might have worked a second career or whose spouses might have passed away, and so they were getting less of their Social Security benefits. And so by working as state union and then also working with other police unions and other unions across the country, we were able to get that law rescinded. And so I know there were some teachers that got thousands of dollars in back payments that they were owed, and so that made a huge difference to them. I think another big win that we've had at the teacher level in Connecticut is advocating for new behavior laws. So there have been a rise in difficult behaviors in classrooms over the years, whether kids are assaulting other students or, sadly, teachers themselves. And so we were able to advocate for stronger laws to get the resources that students need to help them be successful, but then also to make sure that all the other students in the classroom can still learn when someone else is disrupting that environment.
Whew. My goodness. Yeah, no, this is not a job for me. This is why I'm over here, you know? That's amazing too, because again, like I'm on the outside, right? And two, I didn't grow up in like a typical school system. So I don't know what that's like, especially as like a voter. You hear about schools when it becomes a popular or hot topic issue, depending on who's in charge. And you hear about what tenure means and what being in a union means. And I really appreciate you guys telling from your own experience, because that's actually who it affects. So I appreciate that. Thank you for telling us. George, could you bring me through an average day on the job? What's going through your head, taking the class schedules into account and all the well-being of your students at the same time?
Well, I think any teacher will tell you that the more planning you can do and the more prepared you are, the better your day is going to go. Because as we all know, things come up. Not every child wants to learn on any given day. And so you have to do your best to develop those relationships with kids so that you can try to help them work through an issue, whether it's they're coming into school and they're unhappy about something that happened at home, or they're just not having a good day. How can you help turn that kid's day around? That will ultimately help you to get to the things that they need to know. Because we have a schedule, we have a curriculum, and the time is going by, and we have to hit those marks. And so for me, a big part of what I try to do is, personally, I like to get to school early, just so that I can get everything set up for the day. I typically will make sure I have everything I need, copies, whatever it is that the kids are gonna need, whatever materials we're using. Like right now, we're studying fractions in 4th grade. So I have like the fraction pieces, the manipulatives out, ready to go on the counter so that every day, once we get started with the lesson, they go get their fraction bars and they bring them back to their seat, and then we can get started. So little things like that help us to make sure that things can go smoothly, because ultimately we know that there's always going to be a wrench in the gear at some point with something.
With kids? What are you talking about?
You know.
Oh, what a surprise.
Yes, exactly.
Is it stressful? Do you have to move classes all the time, or does it depend on the age?
So right now we have departmentalized. So now I'm teaching math and science, and my partner teaches reading, writing, and social studies. And at midday, we switch classes. Her kids will come to me, and my kids will go to her.
Yeah.
And we've gotten the transitions down. It took us, a couple weeks to kind of get things in the flow for the kids to get used to it. 4th graders have not had to do that in a few years. So just getting used to that flow has been challenging for them.
So before we move on, now this kind of brings up something else I wanted to ask about. What do you do personally if there is a child or children that are not paying attention or not listening, and there are issues with that, because I don't know the restrictions of that, and I don't know how you would handle it?
I mean, for a teacher, you're using all those tools in the toolbox that you have. So like, you are trying to redirect the child. If there's something that they're playing with, you try to either have them go put it back at their seat, something, so that you can try to get them to focus on what we're doing in the moment. When behaviors start to become a little bit more persistent, then that's when you have to call in some backup support from maybe an RBT, a behavior technician in the school, who can come in and maybe take that student aside to talk to them a little bit and see what's going on. Typically, when I'm in the middle of the lesson, it's really hard to then stop what you are doing, pull that student aside, try to have a side conversation with them. Sometimes maybe just that little bit of side conversation, say, as soon as we're done with the lesson, then we can move on, we can get what you need. But right now, I need you to focus on what we're doing right now. Sometimes that might work and sometimes it might not. And so then it just depends on, at that point, what you choose to do.
How do you keep your calm?
You have to remember to keep breathing. You have to remember to keep breathing, because when I was in school for teaching, they always said, like, you have to learn what your triggers are. You have to learn what sets you off, because kids, they will trigger you.
Oh, they find that button, they push it.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're good at it.
100%. If they are trying to engage in a power struggle, you have to just step back and be like, nope, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because then you're playing into them. So you have to walk away, give yourself a moment to count backwards. You know, you can use a Mel Robbins, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm moving on over here, you know.
Yeah.
So you learn tricks along the way, you
Yeah.
know. Another thing that has helped me is that when you don't pay attention to it, it seems to extinguish itself.
Okay, I like that one.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really good. Yeah, because
Yeah.
the attention is what feeds
Is what's
a reaction.
feeding it.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
fueling it when you start to like engage in that, like, I'm gonna try to get you to put your pen down because I asked you
Yeah.
to use a pencil, or I'm gonna try to, so yeah.
Yep. Yep, it makes a lot of sense to me. Well, we could talk about that for the rest of the night, but I have to move on. I'm sorry.
No problem.
So Michael, I don't have the quote with me right now, but I will put it above our heads in the video. But basically, I looked back on 2016 election year when we're gonna just call him Mr. T, okay, for algorithm sakes. And I saw that part of the quote he was talking about in teachers was talking about indoctrination.
Yet, as we meet here tonight, there is a growing danger that threatens every blessing our ancestors fought so hard for, struggled, they bled to secure. Our nation is witnessing a merciless campaign to wipe out our history, defame our heroes, erase our values, and indoctrinate our children.
And that's something I think we see come up more often, maybe than we used to. I don't know. Hey, I wasn't alive in the 60s. Okay, I don't know what was going on. But I do know what it was like growing up in the 90s and early 2000s. And that has become more of like, I don't think that conversation has gone away, is what I'm getting at. So you as a teacher, could you tell me what do you say to people calling teachers indoctrinators?
So, I mean, it sounds funny, but like we always joke around, like if I could indoctrinate the kids, I would get them to all raise their hand before they speak. Like I would be getting them to follow all the rules the first time around, which progress, but it's never going to get there. I joke around, if I can make it through a day without repeating directions, I tell the kids they'll get a full day of recess, a pizza party, an ice cream party, because I just know it's unfortunately not the reality. With 10 and 11-year-olds, I'm going to have to repeat directions. But I think people really think we have a lot more power with what we're doing. We're really just wanting to make sure that every child that walks into our classroom has the opportunity to succeed. We want to make sure that they're not feeling like they're bullied, that they're put down, that they are looked at differently because of who they are, because we know that all of those things will impact their education. So we are really just making sure that our schools are inclusive spaces where every child feels accepted and welcomed. And it seems really crazy to me that saying every child is welcome here in a classroom is controversial in these days. As teachers, we want what's best for each of the children. Like we're not trying to steer your child away from what you want to raise your child to be at home. We want what you want for your child. We want to see them succeed. We want to see them reach their fullest potential and be able to do whatever they want with their life. We're not trying to get to train them to be a certain way or think our way is that way. And really, like, we're not teaching lessons about these things that people think we're teaching about. We might just include a book that references a character that might belong to a group that these kids might not experience in their daily lives, and just exposing them to different things so that they understand the world around them and the different types of people they might come in contact with, and just how to treat everyone like a human being. Like you don't have to agree with them, you don't have to be exactly like everyone else, but you at least want to treat everyone like a human. And so, yeah.
Okay, so you said a word that just made my mind go bing, and that word is exposure. So could you tell us, from all the teaching that you've done and before that, all the classwork that you've had to learn from going to school yourself, what does exposure do for a child when it comes to learning new facts about the world?
So it has a huge impact on the kids. I wish I knew the exact numbers and everything. There were studies done that if a Black child had another Black teacher in the elementary schools, like their chances of success like increased greatly. And so it's about seeing that they can succeed. We want every child to see teachers that look like them and talk like them and who are like them in their daily lives, to see that they have the potential to be a teacher, to be a doctor, to be any of these things. You know, I look back at my schooling and I think about the books I read, and there were some really great books, but they were very much the white male protagonist character. And I think just by reading books with different types of characters and knowing what it's like in different parts of the world helps kids understand the world in a better way.
maybe a little empathy for another point of view,
Yes.
maybe a little compassion
Yes.
for someone that's different from you. Yeah, yeah.
100%.
That makes sense to me. Again, okay, we're doing good. My foot has fallen asleep.
Oh, no.
And Mike, if you will clap on me in the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, George, back to you. Okay. So could you tell me what are the causes you see for gaps in a child's education and how can we mend this as a collective?
So obviously one thing that's always going to be a struggle is literacy. Sometimes students don't come to school having had rich literacy at home. They have not been exposed to a lot of books. They don't have a lot of vocabulary. You know, there is definitely a lot of things that have made it challenging for those children to just come to school and hit the ground running where they're expected to be, when not every kid has the same, let's say, pre-K experience or before pre-K experience. Yeah, as a collective, you know, I don't really have the best answer for that. Like there's a lot that people can do. One being read to your child as much as you can. I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing is that more and more kids are babysat by a cell phone and watching videos and not having to maybe have an older sibling read to them or even have a parent read to them. And this is becoming so widespread that that's where we're seeing the drop off. And it's not happening in one socioeconomic status. It's not happening in one racial household. It's happening across the board, you know, in all households. So that to me seems like the thing that we're up against the most right now is just trying to get kids to open up a physical book and read.
It's interesting. So I grew up in the early 2000s and I specifically did not have like a iPhone at that time. And then iPod came out with like something where you could text and things like that, but you had to have Wi-Fi. So it was very much like as soon as you were out of the house, like you weren't thinking about that. And honestly, I know that most kids at school, like some of them would find the Wi-Fi password and then it would like spread like wildfire. But if that wasn't happening, you really were just texting and then, you know, getting distracted by average things that you would grow up with. So I feel really lucky that I didn't have that, but I also feel like you and I might be the first generation that experienced like what it's like to be addicted to a phone. You come from a low socioeconomic place. If you have parents that are working several jobs and your older brother maybe doesn't want to read to you or whatever, or you don't have an older brother, what are you to do? And I know you try everything you can, like 150% into the classroom, but that's not a child's full day, you know? So it's very much like if parents aren't working with their teachers, I would assume the system can't support, or it can only support so much for the child. So I appreciate you talking about reading. Okay, so Mike, you've stated to me that the burden has gone from the student to the teacher. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, so I think, you know, they always talk about the pendulum in education. And, you know, I think for a while, the structure was either you get it or you don't. And, you know, if you don't get it, then you're just not going to be a successful student. And I think we don't want to have that mentality either. But I do think, unfortunately, the burden has been placed on teachers to make sure they can prove 1,000,001 ways that they've worked for the child, where kids can then not always have to hold themselves accountable for their own work. So luckily, we don't necessarily have this policy here in Torrington, but I know that there's other school districts across the country that they're not allowed to give a kid a 0. Even if they don't hand in an assignment, like they're given a 50 on that so that it doesn't bring down their average. And so I think for a long time, we've kind of put more of the burden on teachers to show all the different strategies that they've done. And I think it is important. We do want to work to help every child succeed. But I think some of the kids have also learned helplessness and that they are waiting for the teacher. They're waiting for the support. They're waiting for the accommodation to be able to be successful. And a lot of kids are afraid to take risks. They don't want to be wrong. They wait, again, for the specific direction, and they have to do it the way that we were, you know, tell them to do. So I think we need to hold kids more accountable for different things. Like one example for our field trips, we don't want any kid not to be able to attend because a parent doesn't send in the permission form. And we know like that form might come back, but now might take the permission slip even the day of the field trip, which leaves the nurse and other people scrambling to make sure we have everything necessary to get that kid safely on the trip. There needs to be a fine line. Like, yes, we want to have some leeway for people, but we also need to make sure we're holding people accountable. Otherwise, they're going to continue to take all the slack that they're given.
Yeah. I mentioned the word collective, and then you mentioned the word responsibility. And I think, if you're affiliated with a political party, you're either all about community or you're all about personal responsibility. And in my mind, I'm like, you can't have a community without personal responsibility and vice versa. You can't just live in a bubble, right? And then just watch other people suffer and say, oh, well, and that's why you're teachers. Oh my God, like that's why.
Yeah,
but,
greater, like the collective and supporting each other rather than just always worrying, well, I got my stuff done and,
Yeah. I mean, it really what it gives a child too at the end of the day is freedom. You want them to give freedom of responsibility so they have more autonomy over their own decisions. So I appreciate you saying that as a teacher, because again, I don't think I've ever heard that online coming from a politician saying that teachers are concerned about that. So it just makes sense to me. Okay, so I have a section down here and it's called Let's Talk About Money, okay? Everybody's favorite topic. So George, we're gonna talk about pay discrepancy. I was wondering, what did you notice from working at Starbucks 17 years ago to working as a teacher today when it comes to money?
Yeah, well, obviously the first time I got an offer when I became an assistant manager in New York City, I was definitely a little bit surprised by how large the number was. And New York City obviously being a very busy place, it kind of made sense because your stores are making so much money. New York City is a huge hub for them. So then fast forward another 5 years after that, when I started going to school for education, when I started hearing like what the first year salary was in New York City, then I started doing some math and I'm like, okay, rent, food, all these things, and it doesn't really add up for a sustainable life for teachers. So you're working another job on top of being a school teacher, So for me, it made me have to really think about whether or not I was going to follow the path of becoming a teacher, because how else would I survive? Things fell into place. Moving back to Connecticut was a big part of that. I think we have made it so that we can do well on what I make now. And of course, as the years have gone by, my salary has increased based on the degree I have and all those things. So I'm thankful for that. If I were working in a corporate job, I'd probably be making double.
Yeah. Damn. Okay, well, Mike, speaking of corporate jobs and things like that, could you speak to the schooling that you were required to take for your job compared to your brothers and the difference of pay between those careers that you've seen?
Yeah, in order to get my teaching degree and my teaching certificate, I needed to have my bachelor's degree. A bachelor's degree was what my brother that went into finance needed and what my brother who went into engineering needed to graduate. So a couple years ago, my brother in finance, I think was like 5 or 6 years into his career, but already at that point, his Christmas bonus is greater than my yearly salary. And so gotten his certified financial accountant degree. My brother that's an engineer went back for his MBA, and those were additional certificates that they chose to go back for, and that did increase their salary, rightfully so. But then as a teacher, we're required to go back and get your master's degree. If you don't get your master's degree after 5 years, you can get like one extension, but then you won't be able to get your teaching certificate renewed. So without your master's degree, eventually you would have to stop teaching. So when I went back and got my master's degree, it did add about $5,000 per year to my salary, which was a great increase percentage-wise for me. But when you look at what my brother's, who was an engineer, his increase when he went back and got his MBA was much faster. And his return on investment, him paying off his loans for his degree, will be much faster than it will for me with the increase in my salary. So with my first few years of teaching, I lived at home and then I moved in with several roommates so that I could afford cheap rent and just scrape by. Especially my student loans accounted for almost like 30 to 40% of my take-home pay when I first started teaching. So it really made it hard to do any long-term savings. So it wasn't until I went back and got my master's degree and had a few years in the career that now I feel like I'm in a spot where I can actually save for like maybe a house one day or save for future retirement and other things. So I've gotten there, and I never went into teaching for the money. It definitely is tough when I'm thinking about my very strict budget allotment where I have every dollar allotted and then think about how much more money I could have made if I went into another career option.
And it kind of goes back to like, you know, what you learn growing up too. So let's say you wanted to be a teacher so bad, right? But maybe you weren't given a ton of skills from your parents, let's say, about financial stability. And maybe you didn't come from the most financial stable place. And just hearing that, like, it doesn't matter how much you would want to continue teaching. If you don't have the finances to go get your master's, you cannot continue.
Yep.
And that is such a shame because that leaves a lot of people that care out, especially
Yes.
it's like, you know, you're getting more, you know, experience at that time. So that's what you want in a classroom. So anyone who's watching this and they feel a little protective over like, well, I work for money. We are not saying that you do not work. No. All we're trying to get across is that the reason why you can work is because you were taught by a teacher how to do math or whatever else you did that inspired you to get that job. And those teachers are scraping by to try and help you get ahead. So I think if we're not, again, helping the collective of that, then more than one person is going to suffer from it. And we want everybody to feel like they can own a house or they can get this thing that they need. And also like have some work-life balance maybe, hello,
Yes.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, running doesn't cost that much, but
Nope.
I know.
Yep.
You know, but everybody's not a runner. So anyways, I appreciate you two being honest about that because that's not a subject that pretty much anybody wants to talk about. So
Yes.
okay, so this is for both of you. Beyond curriculum, what lessons do you want your kids to learn from you? So George, we'll start with you.
I want them to be good human beings. You know, I just want them to realize that the other person in the classroom that could be having a bad day just like they are is just like them. That we are there to help them grow, that we care about them. I want them to kind of like, again, like actions speak louder than words. And so like when I'm helping other students, and Michael mentioned this before, how many times do you have to repeat directions? I will have students come over to me when they see me working with another student and want my attention. And I will say, well, when I'm done with Johnny, I'll come over and see you, you know, like help them to understand. And of course, fourth graders, 8, 9-year-olds, their only concern is about themselves, right? That's where they are developmentally. But, you know, we're trying to teach them. It's not all about you, but I will be with you soon, you know?
Yeah, that's lovely. Okay, so Mike, the same for you. Beyond the curriculum, what lessons do you want your kids to learn from you?
Yeah, I think I really want my kids to walk away with the skills necessary to choose the life that they want. I want them to be able to pick the career or the life path that they would like to see and that will make them happiest. My dad always gave me a quote like, you want to be the one who gets to make the choices for you. You don't want other people to get to make those choices. So I tell kids like, you want to be working hard and involved so that you can choose what path you get to go on in your future. But I also want them to understand that it's just as important to succeed in, you know, school as it is to be a good human being, and that we want to give back to the community that we're a part of. So recently I did have one of my students, she's now a senior, and she and another student that I had back when they were in fourth grade emailed me and they said, you would be proud of us. We're in all these honor classes and we're giving back to the community daily. And like that just made my heart so full because I knew how smart they were and I knew if they pushed themselves, they would be able to open any door in front of them. But again, that they are so involved in making the world a better place and want to see that everyone succeeds, you know, that it's not a competition, that we can all lift each other up, I think is huge. There's the quote, like, I don't care what my kid scores on the test as long as he is kind to the kid who has no one to sit with at lunch. And I think that is just as important. Like, I'm super proud of those kind kids that go out of their way to make others feel accepted and welcomed and like they belong, as I am with the kid who, you know, scores 100 on the test.
I've never been a teacher, but you and I volunteered for 7 years. So that was the first year of middle school all the way up until high school. And something I love so much is when you see a child realize their potential. That, I think, ultimately is what you guys are doing every day. And I know it doesn't seem like it works a lot of days, right? You know, it seems like we're going 20 steps back instead of 2 steps forward. But I know all of us have talked to individuals, friends, families that have said, oh my God, you're a teacher. Or, oh my God, you know about a teacher. I remember my favorite teacher from this class. And oh my God, this person didn't understand me at all. And just a difference of care that you see a child give to a person that cares about them, right? The kindness thing.
Being seen.
Being seen, heard, and understood. It goes so far.
Yes.
And you do not need to be a straight A student to get by. You do not need to push your way through to win. I think there's a lot of conversation right now about winners and losers, and I think it brought up like the stress that kids feel. That's from the phones. It is so from the phones, but it's also about how adults talk about life. And I really, really love hearing a nuanced conversation specifically from teachers, because that's where we need it. So I really want to thank you two for coming here today. I always go out with this question: what do you think everybody should hear in their lifetime? That could be a song or an album. But George, we'll start with you.
So right away, the first album that came to mind to me is the Beatles' Rubber Soul. Probably one of my favorite albums of all time. And I used to listen to it constantly when I was living in Los Angeles in the mid-90s. And I was riding the bus from Glendale, California into Hollywood, because I couldn't find a place to rent in Hollywood where school was when I was going to music school. And so on the bus rides, I met people of all walks of life. And some people would talk to you and be really nice, and some people just wanted to be left alone. And me being who I'm just like, yeah, that's totally cool. Like, if you don't want to talk or whatever, but I would strike up a conversation with anyone. And I remember having some of the most stimulating conversations on those bus rides. And that when I wasn't talking to anyone, or if it was late and I was heading back from school, like on 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, I would just put my earphones in and I would listen to that album. That was one that was on rotation constantly.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite from that album or no? Or any lyric that sticks out too?
Yeah, not right off the top of my head,
That's
but
fine.
there's so many good ones on that.
I'm gonna listen to that on the way home.
Yeah.
All right, Michael, how about you?
All right, for me personally, one of my favorite artists is Red Hot Chili Peppers, and the album Stadium Arcadium came out when I was in high school, right around the time I was getting my driver's license.
Nice.
And so I just remember playing that album in the car with my friends, and now anytime it comes on, I just like put myself back in that mentality. I can get back into that more carefree attitude back when I thought I knew everything but didn't really know anything at all. Again, yeah. But again, it's one that just extremely nostalgic for me and just always reminiscent of my friends that I had back then.
That's so cool. All right, awesome. Well, I wish for you both the best school year that you could picture,
Thank you. Thank you,
and
Phoebe.
I definitely think there will be more conversations to be had in the future. So this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
you.
All right,
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Goodbye.
I was like,